All right. Well, good morning or good afternoon now, Dan. Boy, that breakfast sandwich was sure good, huh?
I think it gave me the energy and the drive on this podcast. And we kind of went into this podcast with an idea, but once again, I'm leaving this podcast wound up, fired up, and I feel like I'm rejuvenated and I learned something.
Yep. Yeah, you could make the best laid plans on a podcast, but you almost go into them with an idea and then you just let it flow from you. So this podcast, we were talking over our season and some epic hunts we had. So we talked about, your favorite hunt, my favorite hunt from the season. And then we kind of got into like recovery and blood trailing, and we talked about the recovery of our animals, which I thought got really interesting. So the podcast went long, like we didn't know it, but we were like an hour and 25 minutes or something on that podcast. Yeah, time flew by. It's such a good one.
It is. And as we said, with the art of the recovery, so there's all these factors in bow hunting, and you get to the spot where you make your shot, and now everything is out of your control. And so you have to make the best moves, the right moves at the right time to recover an animal. Mm-hmm. And we talk that, yeah, it's worth celebrating when you double lung something and he tips over with an eyesight. That's what we're celebrating. A quick, clean kill. That's what is worthy of being excited about. And that's what we all strive for, right? As bow hunters. But it doesn't always go like that. You don't always see that animal expire with an eyesight. And you don't always see your arrow impact. And we talk about that too, whereas, we have an advantage a little bit because we're filming our stuff. And so if you can film your hunts and film an arrow impact, that's huge on making the right decision on how far to press, how much to sit back. And so that's what we talked about was the art of recovery.
Mm-hmm. Oh, it's a great one. Yeah, and we talked about a couple animals that we recovered that went a long ways. And we talked about lack of blood trail. We talked about analyzing the hit. Just so much good stuff in there. So, yeah, I can't wait to get into it. But, yeah, great podcast, man.
Yeah, and this was, our new season of Beyond the Grid in 2025. This is kind of the idea of the podcast was to talk about some of the edits that we have coming, the hunts that we have coming, and just an unbelievable year for archery elk. Man, we got 5 bulls on the ground between you and me and Jordan. Mm-hmm. And so those are going to be just phenomenal episodes with some giant bulls. Mm-hmm. You killed your best bull. Some big bulls hit the dirt this year, along with some other just adventure hunts, your high country mule deer hunt, some black bears in Alaska and New Zealand episode that's coming up. Just the stuff that feeds us as bow hunters, that fires us up, that gives us the drive in life. This is what it's all about. And so that's why this podcast was so fun. And I think you guys are going to really enjoy it.
Yeah, 100%. So we just want to thank sponsor, and we'll get right into it. So we want to thank Cutter Stabilizers. Earl Stroll's a friend of mine. In fact, we got to get him on the podcast here. I'll hit him up after we finish. But he had a heck of a season himself, man. He killed a great bull and antelope, and then I think he killed a whitetail. But he had a heck of a season with his bow as well.
Yep. Yeah, that's good to see. It's the T-shirt, I'll roll with killers that they have. Mm-hmm. Like, that guy's a killer. Mm-hmm. So he's putting his money where his mouth is, that's for sure.
Yep. I like, I think it's Justice is another young man that's like a good up-and-comer that's a great bow hunter. And I know he's affiliated. I'm not sure if he works for Cutter full-time. Anyways, he's a great young kid that's friends with Earl as well. He had a good season as well. But, yeah, just those Cutter Stabilizers, man. So happy with those things. I love that they're carbon fiber. I love that it has great connection points, so it's hardy. I mean, I don't know if he wants to know this or not, but I kind of use my 15-inch stabilizer as a trekking staff a lot of the times going uphill or for balance or whatever. But they're just built so rock solid that they hold up. And then you're able to adjust the weights by 1 ounce at a time. And it really helps with my hold, helps with my reaction of the bow. They cut the wind really well. It's just a great set of stabilizers.
And what I really like, too, because I'm all about, storage and traveling, and I put that quick detach on there, and that's something that you take a little bit for granted, not having one, and you're like, okay, you just live with your long stabilizer out there. But for bow case, travel, storage, you just have that, just half a turn, pop it loose. It's a quick detach, and you pack it in your bow case, and everything fits just so much easier. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, I'll take advantage of those quick detach pieces for the stabilizers as well. I love that feature.
Well, and they'll actually store them in the quick detach, so then they point up in the bow, so it's great for in the vehicle. It's great for like riding a bike. It's great for travel, like all that stuff. You can quick detach, and then it stores it in a good spot. So yeah, no, it's definitely a well thought out design. He's got a sidebar mount that's a really good one, well thought out. So yeah, just great products, great company. Make sure to go check them out over at Cutter, and thanks to Earl for his support of the podcast. Yep. And then over at Eastmans, like you say, we're working on edits like crazy. It's such an exciting time of year. So pumped to see your New Zealand edit, which I know you've been working and putting a bunch of hours in. Really excited. Like Ike's got an Africa hunt coming up. So I think that'll drop actually this week. So it should be out by the time this podcast is out.
Yep.
And then we did a podcast with Luke yesterday, and you helped Luke kill that sheep. And man, it was quite an adventure. It made for a good podcast, and I can't wait to see the finished film. I've seen pieces and parts of it, but I haven't seen the kill sequence yet. But
there's just something about adventure hunts. Yeah, I don't care what species you're hunting, but it leaves you a better person, built character, and fires you up for coming hunts. Mm-hmm. So I'm excited about these edits too coming up. It's what we live for, and man, we have some good content coming down the pike.
Yeah, that's it. We also have the magazines. We also have the Eastman's Elite membership. So with the Eastman's Elite membership, you can get the Deer Collective, the Elk Collective, Eastman's TagHub, both magazines. It's a real fair rate, and there's just so much knowledge to be gained from all those programs. So we've got it all bundled together, and it's in the Eastman's Elite membership. So you can check that out on the website.
And watch for offers too with different products that we're giving away, Cryptek gear, several different knives to choose from. So yeah, definitely keep track on eastmans.com of some of the the different offers that we have coming down the pipe with that, not only that stuff, but all this gear that we're throwing in with it.
Pretty much pays for the course. It's like for what the gear's worth and what the course, what the elite membership costs, you're pretty much getting the elite membership for free, which can further your learning curve by years just by going through some of these programs, and you get some really good gear as well to be able to use. I love the Outdoor Edge replaceable blade knives. I love the Cryptek gear. I have the best technical mountaineering gear system I've ever put together. So there's some good stuff coming up.
There is. Like you said, it's basically free.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right.
You're not going to see a better deal than this.
Yep, for sure. So, well, yeah, we've got those. Let's see. We talked about magazines. We're still writing in those all the time. Have articles coming out, subscriber articles. I love the magazines. I've been a subscriber now for, 14, 15, 16 years. I don't know.
Yeah.
A long-standing subscription to Eastman. So I love getting each and every magazine. Check those out. Check out our other podcasts. And, man, let's get into this one. It's a long one, but it's a good one.
It's a good one. It's worth it.
Yep. Cool. All right.
Good. Yep.
Okay. All right. Well, welcome, Dan. Another podcast, another live one. This will be fun.
Heck yeah. Let's do another one.
Yep. So, I just wanted to talk about, our seasons and some of the hunts we have. Man, we have some awesome YouTube videos coming out, and I just couldn't be more excited about this season and what we have going on, like a bunch of great elk hunts. You just had this epic hunt on that special draw tag that you got. You said it was some of the best hunting, some of the best elk hunting you've ever seen.
It really was. I've seen some cool stuff over the years elk hunting, and some on public and some on private. I'm an opportunist, so if I can get some access, I will. I mainly hunt public, but for anywhere I've ever been or seen guiding, not hunting for myself, but guiding or anything, yeah, I have never seen. Let's just say I've never passed up 350 bulls, and I was passing up 350 bulls.
That's crazy
on this hunt, so it was a real treat.
Yeah. Huh. Well, you waited a lot of years for it, 20 years for it, or 18 years or something? I can't remember exactly.
Yeah, it's 17 points.
17 points, okay.
Yeah, and it's the first time that I've ever burned that many points on a hunt. And, some of my buddies were like, oh, it's going to be stressful, and it's a lot of pressure. And you sit here and think about it, and it's like, okay, with this job, like filming hunts and the demand to produce, that's a lot of stress, right? It can be. It's just how you handle it and how you deal with it. And I know it can break people. It has, and it's just not for some people, which is fine. It's absolutely fine. But there's something about the pressure and the stress that I enjoy that. I enjoy being tested. It's good for us. It's good for us. And so I just looked at it as just another elk hunt. That's what it is, right? It's, the points don't matter at this point. The points don't matter. It's time to focus on the elk hunt, and it's just another elk hunt, and doing my homework and doing what I need to do to put myself in the best situation to have a chance at a big bull. And so it's no different than any other hunt. So that was the big thing, is just going into it with the right mindset. That's huge. And I was lucky enough to, this area, it's mostly private. And so there are some public hunting and some public areas to be had, but it gets hunted hard, and, a lot of the elk get pushed off, and there is opportunity though. And it's just a lot of luck if you're going to catch a big bull on the public on the day that you're hunting. And so you have that. And then, there's other ranches and landowners that will let you hunt. And some of them, a trespass fee. So that's part of it too. But I think a unit that is mostly private, it definitely takes some understanding and some being involved in that world before you're just going to go apply for the tag and go hunt it and expect yourself to make the most out of the tag. Because a lot of guys, they come up empty. And it's one of those hunts that you're just not going to show up and do well on unless you understand the movement and you understand how the private hunting pressure is going to manipulate what those elk do as well. And so, once I understood that, and I've hunted this unit in the past, right? And we talk about this, that if you can hunt a unit year after year, it's such an advantageous position to be in. And even having 1 year of experience is huge. And this kind of trickles down to, I'll talk to guys, and you got a party of guys that want to put in and hunt a limited entry area that might be a pretty tough area to draw. But I'll advise against it. You don't want everybody go all in on 1 year and have the stress and pressure to kill 3 big bulls on this limited draw unit. It's like spread it out a little bit. Maybe one guy hunts 1 year, and then the next year you apply and go hunt it again. And I think if you spread out that pressure and that hunting over the course of 2 to 3 years, you're going to find that you're going to, in the end, kill better bulls.
That's such a great tip. Yeah, I hadn't thought of that. Like, everybody wants to hunt with their buddies, but you're right. To go kill 3 giant bulls on one hunt is a really tall order. You got a better chance of killing 3 bulls in 3 years, and then you can focus on who has the tag. It makes sense. So you had a lot of logistics on this hunt then. It's a pretty difficult one as there is so much private around. So you must have worked hard in the summer. I know you took a ton of days, like you did that right, where you set a bunch of days aside to give yourself a chance to be successful. And then you had to line up some different permissions or accesses or different things, some different legwork that you had to do. And that was due to previous knowledge you had. And you had a good buddy that had hunted this that also gave you some intel too, right?
Yeah. And it boils back down to, like in the last episode that we just previously talked about, is how important the networking and I don't want to sound like I'm just using people, right? But networking in the case that if you have something to offer somebody, they have something to offer to you back. And so it's a friendship is what it is. And that's how friendship should be, is each part of the friendship or any relationship, each person should benefit, right? And the benefit meaning maybe it's just becoming a better person. That's what a friendship is all about, is the other person to lift you up. And that's what makes any relationship, flourish, right? And so I'm a relationship guy. Like, it's important in life. the people that you surround yourself with and how you live your life and how you treat those people is going to dictate what kind of life you have and where you go and how successful you are.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I cherish these friendships. I cherish the landowners up there and the friendships that I've made in the journey. And, the guy that gave me permission, I didn't know him. And, I called him up and had a conversation with him and talked to him, and we hit it off, and we're cut from the same cloth, and that probably helped too. I mean, we're hunters. We love elk with, as Barney would say, with every fiber of our being. We love the journey and elk country and everything that has to do with elk hunting, and so it just resonated with one another. And he was like, "Yeah, you can hunt my place," and so that's all it took, and that's kind of one of the better areas, the better places to hunt up there. And so after gaining that access, I knew that it was just going to be a matter of time to find the bull that I wanted to go after. And so at that point, like, knowing that you're going to have a good hunt because you do have private access, you're able to relax a little bit and just enjoy it. And throughout the hunt, I talked to guys that were hunting public and really struggling, and it's like, man, I've been there too. I've been there. And also I wanted to make the most out of the situation in the hunt, because realistically, I would draw it once in my life. Once every 20 years. I might draw it, when I'm almost 40, so I might be 60, and who knows what will happen in 20 years. You don't know. Elk herds and units change, and hunting, waxes and wanes, so it's completely unpredictable. But I just wanted to make the most of it that I could possibly make, and really put those points to the best use that I possibly could. And I did, and I had one of the best experiences of my life. Saw an incredible amount of bulls, and was able to, bulls that aren't under heavy pressure, they act a little bit differently. It's a little bit, I wasn't going to say easier. It's challenging in other ways, but let's just say finding big bulls was not like an issue. It was not a hurdle that I had to overcome. It was more, what type of bull did you want to go after? Mm-hmm. So that's a cool luxury to have.
Yeah.
And it's very rare to be in a place like that.
The film's going to be incredible, right? With all that action, all those bulls. And I love what you said too about friendships. It's to have good friends, you have to be a good friend. Like, that's the only way it works. And it's like you have given me intel on a unit that I've drawn before that really helped me be successful, and you weren't looking for anything in return, or, not that we don't share info or help each other out along the way. I'll have a chance to repay that favor for sure. But you offered up, you said, you drew this tag. I've hunted it before. I killed a great buck. Let me give you some intel on this place. And then that intel really helped me be successful. And so, I think, to build good friendships and people that you share info, it makes me better. Like, I've got a network of individuals that I call friends, and a couple like really good buddies that I share everything with. But these guys, they're out trying to find their own spots and sharing info with me and sharing pins when things get tough. And, it's almost like I'm not going out the season just by myself. Like, I have a bunch of buddies that are also helping that, hey, I ran into stuff in this spot. Go check out this spot. Or years prior when it was drier, this was a honey hole for me. Go check out this spot. So, and other buddies that develop spots in just different parts of the state that are like, hey, come hunt with me. I've got a good area here that's hunting really good and good population. I saw this many bucks. Like, let's go in together, And so, I think those friendships, those connections, I think they really help. And, not only there's a couple good friends, but the network of friends I have. And then, like you say, you try to share the knowledge and share the wealth. And, you're not going to you're not going to draw somebody a treasure map with all the spots that you've worked so hard to figure out in your exact honey hole. Like, I don't want to see other guys where I'm hunting, but if they draw a unit that I don't have a tag for, like, I'm willing to share information and help them out or give them an understanding of what goes on in the unit. So, I think that's huge.
Yeah.
So, So yeah, you spent time, you lined up everything, took the time, and then you went and just had the hunt of your lifetime. Got to chase some of those bulls in that upper echelon caliber, like that. The 450 plusers or 350 to 400
Yep.
plusers, you know. So, man, it had to be wild to chase some bulls like that, and had to be some great action. And then the bull you killed was just amazing.
Yeah, it was one of those hunts where it was fun just to sit back. You're just in awe a little bit because you sit back and you're just watching the rut activity and you're watching the mature bulls, and you just had to soak it in and be not worried about killing one, but like, wow. I mean, to see all these mature bulls, these 350 plus bulls that were just doing their thing, and how competitive it is, and the country is just equally as epic as the elk, and it grows big bulls, and the competitiveness and the frames on some of these bulls were unbelievable. And when they get it, it's funny because you're trying to judge them, right? You're trying to like look at them like, okay, what's that bull gonna score? And I know score doesn't matter, but being an elk freak, I'm big on score, meaning I want to know what I'm looking at. I want to know what that bull is going to measure because I enjoy everything about looking and hunting at elk. And so some of these bulls, they have such huge bodies and these just out of this world frame, but they don't have like super long points, like outstanding features. They don't have any points that are like mega huge long that look cartoonish big, but they're still a really high scoring bull, like a 370 plus bull, because just the size of the frame is going to carry them up well over 350. And so it was hard to judge some of these bulls too. And ultimately you're like, okay, that bull's clearly big. We need to ground check him. He's a shooter, right? And it's not like I was being that picky on, what I wanted to kill. Was I looking for something, as big as I could possibly hunt? Absolutely. But was I going to pass up, a 370 bull to go try and kill a 390 bull? No. I mean, you're going to kill a 370 bull. He gives you an opportunity. And so passing up a 350 bull is a crazy thing. I mean, it's probably one of the few places in the world that you're going to pass up a 350 bull, but we got some really cool footage of being super close to big bulls, and we had a couple sets. This bull, he walked right up to us at 10 yards, a 350 bull, and I'm just looking at him, and it was so fun just to listen to that and see that, and just see giant bulls. It was just a treat.
Mm-hmm.
So eventually, one of the bulls that was on the radar was kind of like a fair amount of people knew about this bull. And man, elk are, especially during the rut, they're so unpredictable, and they have these tendencies. So some bulls will like summer in an area and then kind of rut in that localized area and not really go too far until after the rut. And then other bulls are travelers, and they'll summer in an area and then show up 15 miles over here. And then at the end of the rut, or even the middle to end of September, they're 15 miles back over here. They're like these incredible traveling, mindsets of that these bulls have. And the bull that I ended up taking was one of these traveling bulls that he was known about, and people had pictures of him, and just the biggest, beautiful 6x6 you've ever seen in your life. But nobody could hardly, it was hard to keep track of him because he just moved so much. And so, I was hunting bulls, and I found a bull that I was going after. And ultimately what happened, this huge 7x7 that had like 50 cows, and I was kind of staging on him, and I hear a bugle behind me, and I throw up the spotter, and I look up there, and there's this giant 6x6 with like 12 cows. And I recognized him immediately because some of the guys in the area had sent me pictures of, be on the lookout for this bull because he disappeared. And I was like, holy smokes, that's him. And he basically handed himself to me. I was on this knob looking at this big 7x7 to go after, and his cows. And this is why I really enjoy and how beneficial it is to be able to watch elk that are relatively unmolested, because what was happening was you have this huge herd with this huge bull, not a huge herd, 50 cows with this huge herd bull. And then you had the bull I ended up killing with his 13 or 14 cows, but these cows wanted to get to the big herd. They weren't content with this bull. And so they were trying to get away from him. And one of the cows would like take off and like dead sprint like towards this big herd. And he would just run as fast as he could. They came right down the mountain and they almost ran up to us. And I was like, get ready, Tim. We're going to kill this bull right here because he's going to just run up to us, chasing this cow up to us. And it got to a point where he was about 300-400 yards away from his main herd, and he let her go, and she went over to the big herd. And then he hustled back up to his 13 cows and was bugling and just trying to keep them rounded up and keep them, in that tight area. And they were kind of feeding and locked down. But it was interesting. You could tell kind of their mentality was to get away from this bull for whatever reason. I don't know. And some bulls are a little bit more aggressive and prone to fight than others. And he could have just been one of those bulls that was fairly non-confrontational. And maybe it's just a timing thing, or maybe it's just how that bull is wired. But I kind of got down below a rim, and as I worked closer, and I gave him a challenge bugle, and he didn't care. He didn't respond at all to that. And so me and my camera guy, Tim, looped back around, and in the meantime, he was following his cows down the mountain, and I just ended up cutting him off and cresting up over and shooting him at 60 yards. And so it's a little bit more of an unconventional style of call-in, or the lack thereof, and hunt. But I also tend to see on some of these areas that have a high bull-to-cow ratio that there's bugling going on all the time. And so like bugling at a bull or challenging a bull and coming in, you're not going to get a bull to come in because every bull is bugling all the time. So they just don't respond to it like they would normally. But I think in areas like that where you are going to get a good response is if you have a bull with a bunch of cows and he's in a tough spot to go in tight and challenge him and get him to confront you. A dominant herd bull, I think that's where you could call one in. Otherwise, you're just another bugle. And of course, it was very easy to call in satellites. The 280s to 320 type bulls. They're not breeding bulls of the area, and so they're just very eager young pups. The 4 and 5 year olds that are, they're willing, but they're not getting any action, and so they're very, very easy to call in. And so that was fun too to play with some of those bulls. And once again, you're understanding the dynamic of the area. And once you can understand what's going on, then you can apply these specific calling tactics and maybe no calling tactics to hunt that area most effectively. And so that's chess match that we love with bow hunting elk, right? Because every area is a little bit different, and reactions to calls are a little bit different. And so knowing that and analyzing that and then being able to adapt to your situation, I think that's really what sets you apart to be a great elk hunter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think you're right. Man, that sounds like such an epic hunt. I know you put so much of your season into that hunt. You were committed to it. So, yeah, no, it's fun to hear how it went down. I can't wait to watch some of the film, especially with all those big bulls ripping around and such a great bull you killed. I kind of started out the season, with antelope, killed a good antelope, and that was fun. Got some good plays, got my feet underneath me, and then one of my biggest hunts was that early season high country hunt. We talked about it a bit, but that one pushed me to my limits. It's just really extreme country, high elevation, bunch of miles, and I showed up early like I wanted to and scouted. And able to scout some bucks and see some opportunities, and then met up with my cameraman. We went in. We were all of I think 2 days early in there too, in this backpacking spot I wanted to get into. And the buck numbers were good. I don't know if it's quite as good as it was back in the day, but there was a lot of bucks around. It was really green in there this year, which was a 1 in 10 year opportunity. Like a lot of times it's brown and burnt off, but when it's green, the bucks will continue to hold high. They also will throw good racks, when they have that good moisture content that lasts into the summer. And so, yeah, able to find some good bucks in there. I mean, the beautiful thing is it's really far back in there. It's super rugged country. It's your climbs every day are just ridiculous. The amount of elevation you have to put on, and then to have that place pretty much to myself. Like there was some elk hunters that were roaming around off horses, but really for mule deer, I had it all to myself, which was pretty nice. Maybe there were some other guys hunting and maybe hunting lower, different drainages that I wasn't in, but I had it to myself, which was awesome, and turned up a, a handful of really good bucks. There was a couple that I wanted to shoot. Um, One, I don't even know if I came up with it. I think maybe called him the sticker buck, but he had a 3x4 frame and a giant 3x4 frame, like a 30-inch and super tall and long, deep forks, big tines, really heavy, older deer. And then he had a sticker in his palmation of like his G4 that came out. And it was like about a 4-inch sticker. And then he had a matching one on the other side on his other front. And it's just a bomber buck. I mean, a 3x4 is never going to score as good as a 4x4, but even being a 3x4, he's like well into the 190s, like a really good deer.
Wow.
And so I was really focused on killing that buck. And then there was a backup buck that was also a really good deer. Named him Red. He had a red coat. I actually think this deer was younger. He was like 4 or 5. But he was to the point where I couldn't ignore him. He's going to score every bit as good as that 3x4 or maybe even better. Just like this great typical rack on him. Big backs, big fronts, nice wide frame, eye guards. And he had this red coat, so we called him Red. And the first day that I could hunt, Red bedded in the perfect spot. I mean, he bedded, his morning bed was off these cliffs, and I had thermals right, and I just couldn't do it without giving a chance to the sticker buck. It was like, it's day one, there's nobody in here, or so I thought. Like, man, oh man, I just want to get a try at that sticker buck, or at least give him a go before I, try to shoot Red. But it's one of those things too where you have to seize opportunities when they come. So like that big bull that you killed, he showed up, you went over and made a play and you ended up killing him. And you don't know if it's ever going to come together on the Giant 7 with 50 cows if you ever are going to get a chance. And so, it's one of these things you struggle with, seizing the moment, but also trying to kill like the very best buck in there. And I just knew I had to give sticker buck a try. Well, I watched the sticker buck. He actually bedded in a high group of trees. Not a bad spot, but I'm going to wait till the afternoon, till the winds are a little bit steadier, and then see if he adjusts beds and then make a play on him. And about that time, some elk hunters came riding through the drainage, and we're double-digit miles back, and they're hunting elk, not hunting deer, but they work through the drainage. And all these bucks, even though they were 1,500 feet above them, 2,000 feet above them, they spotted these guys. And so the bucks just scattered. There was bucks running everywhere in there. So that was day one. And didn't really get a chance. I kind of saw where they disappeared into some buckbrush, kind of played it for the evening, didn't get a chance at them. So, the days start clicking off, but I keep finding this sticker buck, and eventually I get a really good play at him. I get a play on him, and I see where he beds, and then the stock, I got to go climb 2,000 vertical feet. I've got to go on the backside of the mountain and skirt the backside of the mountain, which was just steep and rocky and gnarly. And so this stock is going to take me a couple hours even to get around. So I'm in a spot where I have a good vantage point, but the problem is it takes so long to get to where the bucks are that they've moved beds or they've changed or everything's changed. But I just got to give myself a chance. And if you start out up high, then you can't see the whole feature. And so then you can't see the buck or where he's at to make a play, So it's kind of like this conundrum of how to play this deal. So I would play the vantage point, 2,000 feet up and around this buck. And, I come over, and I got to keep creeping over the ledge really slow, trying to get to where this buck is. And, man, I see him down below me. I think this is the second good play I had him. I had another good play at him where I was close, Yeah, he was feeding out in front of me. He bedded. I actually approached from below. It didn't take me the 2,000 feet. It was like 1,000 or 1,500, but I could come up below him, keep my wind on the left side, and then I played him to feed out at me, and they played it perfectly. They fed out at me. They're headed right for me, and then they like drop down on a lower trail and they like disappear out of sight even though they're moving my way. Now they're down below me. So I have to readjust down the hill and try to relocate him. And as I readjust down the hill, I get down and through there, and then I've got this 3-point that's headed at me, and he's a big, heavy, older 3-point, but he comes just above me and walks to like 20 yards, and he just knows something's up, and then he like catches my wind, and he blows up, and all the bucks blow up, and it's kind of like blown up for the night. So that was like my first close call. But this other one, I had him bedded 2,000 feet up and around him. I get around him, and he's right where I left him, and he's bedded right there, and I peek around the trees, and he's like, I think the shot was like 57 or 54 or something. So he's like 50 yards down below me, and he's bedded looking away, and it's perfect. And I whispered to my cameraman, I'm like, hey, he's right here. We're going to shoot him right here. Get ready. And I turn back around, and that buck is looking right up and at me. So he like heard that little bit of whisper in between me and my cameraman. My cameraman said something back to me in a whisper. I held my hand to my mouth to talk to him, you know, and push my volume just to him away from the buck. So, you know, I'm not sure. He definitely could have heard me whisper, or I think then he whispered, where's he at? Like trying to get camera on him and stuff because everything's starting to happen. Somehow between that communication, he heard those whispers. Wow. And now he's staring right up and at us with his giant rack at 50 yards, and I can't move. And we're kind of behind some limbs and stuff, so you know, I know he can't see us there, but we just stay motionless. And it feels like forever, like 5 minutes of staring up at us with nobody moving, like just a, what do they call that, like a Mexican standoff, mm-hmm. or so sitting there, and he's staring right up at us. We're staring at him. I have my bow up. Cameraman's ready to go, and we're just waiting and for something to happen. And that buck knew something was up. He heard us whisper, or he heard something, and so he turns his head. You know, I'm able to get a range on him, and then he starts walking off, and he's walking just to the left, not staring at us, just starts walking off. And so he's going to just get out of this situation and just walk off. Well, as he starts to walk off, I'm able to come around the tree. I've got a range. I'm able to draw back. As I draw and we kind of get around that tree, he turns and looks right up at us, and it's a perfect broadside shot at 57 yards right there, just how I want it. Pull, and that shot breaks, and that bow went off. And within milliseconds, that buck jumped that string and was out of that way. Like my arrow hit behind his butt because he took off that direction. And it was like, it doesn't take that long for an arrow to get there at 50 yards. And it was totally behind him. So he put a body length in between me and the arrow by the time the arrow got there. Of course, you're just crushed. And man, it's just like one of these hunts you dream about, prepare for all year, and you get this shot and you think you do everything right, and the buck jumps your string, and you're just left heartbroken. All this climbing, all these days of chasing these bucks. And so I continue playing the game with him and Red, and you know, we have some other close calls, but after that, that buck just knew what was up, and he just wouldn't come out of this buckbrush. And the buckbrush was like waist deep to head deep. And I mean, one day I spent 120 yards from this buck. I spent 4 hours waiting for him to come out of the buckbrush, and he just fed in that buckbrush and would bed down back in it. And now he just knows that something's hunting him, or he knows the pressure's on him. He just isn't going to make any mistakes. So I continue hunting these bucks and getting chances and making plays. Get some plays on Red. You know, now as we start to get deeper into days, I'm like, I'd really be happy with Red if I can get a chance at him. I know he's my second choice buck, but sticker buck won't come out of the brush, you know. So now I'm playing on Red, trying to get chances, and I could not make it come together on those couple bucks. You know, the days start clicking off, and eventually, like, I had to make the decision. And we checked some other drainages and other basins where we'd hunt or look at those bucks, and they didn't offer a good play, and then we'd hike to back drainages and look. But eventually it just came to the point where I'm down to my last couple days, and I'm like, I know these two shooters are in here, and I haven't blown them out of the country, but they're not making any mistakes. I just can't kill them in that buckbrush. They're not coming out into the meadows or into the parks. They're just holding in that brush, and you can't stalk through it. You can't see them once you get in there. And so eventually I had to pack up camp and go, let's move another 5 miles, and we're going to go check out new spots for the last couple days, and hopefully I can find a buck that's worth shooting. And so, I mean, this hunt had everything I wanted, like as far as big adventure and big country, giant bucks, everything I dreamed about. But the days start clicking off. You're like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to make it come together in here or not. But, it's that same attitude to just give everything you have, for all the allotted days and just see where the cards fall. And so a couple days left, we move our camp, and it's to strap back on a backpack with 40, 50 pounds again, and to start doing these climbs up around 12, 13,000 feet and up over the top. Had a spot I kind of wanted to camp at. And we make it up to that spot that we're going to camp at. And I've got, I don't know, about 3 or 4 drainages I'm going to hunt. So we start glassing a couple of the drainages. It's middle of the day. We just set the packs off. And then I'm able to spot like this giant 3. Like he's got a whitetail frame, just really long tines, super heavy, and he's bedded. And he's bedded is the highest trees on the mountain. I was bedded at 12.4, 12.5, or something like that. But we've got this nice ridge line that leads to him where I can kind of hide off the backside. And so it's like, here we are, we're back in the game. And now I'm not dealing with any of the buck brush. We've got him in a good spot. And so it was just one of those classic mule deer stalks where heat of the day, thermals coming up, able to keep quiet through the gravel, move really slow, kind of position myself above that buck. And he had another buddy with him. And, able to position. And then the weight was like the patience on some of these bucks you got to have is crazy. I mean, I can't remember if it was 2 or 3 hours, or I remember we did, I tried to keep track of the time on the video so we could at least show it or whatever, but we had to sit there in just the baking sun, and we're kind of behind some trees and limbs, but we didn't have much shade the way the sun was positioned. Just wait and wait and wait and wait and wait some more. And once I got in position, I could actually glass velvet of the smaller buck, so I could see him bedded right there. So I knew those bucks were still there. And bucks got up, and it's like you'd love to have it just perfect, doesn't know you're there, execute a good shot, which is the way you want it to go down. We're hidden behind these limbs, and man, the bucks get up, and I can kind of see that giant 3 moving through the trees. I don't have a shot, and they kind of work up and at us. But the smaller buck comes to like 20 yards of us, and he just knows something is up. He's just got that little spooky attitude of that staring up at us, won't look away from us, even though we're in the branches, even though we haven't moved. He just knows something up. He's 20 yards away, and I'm waiting to get a shot on this other buck, and the other buck walks out at 30 yards, and I can shoot him. He's broadside to me. I'm kind of around the limbs. And my cameraman can't move because that smaller buck is looking right at him at 20 yards. And so we're frozen here for 5 minutes again. We're just waiting for a booth. And the big 3-point has no idea I'm there. He's just feeding, and he's perfectly broadside. He's 30 yards. I can just shoot him there 10 times over. But my cameraman can't see him because he's to my right. He's actually got to get and move over my shoulder. So we're trying to like communicate, to, get on the buck. Like I'm ready to shoot this thing. And so finally the little buck kind of like gets spooky and starts kind of walking off, kind of like that spooky walk, not bounding off or anything, but he just knows something's up. And as he starts walking away, the other buck's like, hey, what's that buck doing? How come he's spooky? And so now he's got his head up, and, I see things going down, and so I draw back, and then I hear my cameraman, and he slides over my shoulder, and he's like, I got him. And so I executed a quick shot on that buck at 30 yards or 28 yards or whatever he was at, and able to put a good arrow down through him. We were quite a bit above him with the angle, so the arrow came in high there. I think it actually sliced that backbone in there as it went through the lungs. There was blood everywhere, so it dropped him immediately. And so, I thought he was going to die right there. I can see blood everywhere, so I know I've caught the lungs and that deal. And man, that buck, he's just squirming around down there, and I'm like, put another arrow in him, and then I can see blood all over his side and everywhere down there, and I think he's dead right there. And man, he makes it up to his feet and then off a 300-foot cliff off that edge.
What?
Yeah, and just tumbled down there. Like, I thought there was going to be nothing left, and I told my I wasn't upset or anything. It was like, well, it is what it is. I got the adventure I went for, and he made it off the ledge. We'll go recover him down there. Hopefully he's not busted up, or we might have to pick up the pieces. But it's just high country mule deer hunting, kind of like goat hunting. It is what it is. If he busted himself up, it's like it's the price of playing the game up here in this steep, rugged country. But he made it off the edge of that cliff. So yeah, we'd go down, recover him, and he didn't bust a tine on that thing, but he fractured his skull, so his jaw was busted. I actually skull capped the buck with my knife. That's how he fractured his skull. Yeah, so he totally fractured his skull, and he hit hard, like I'm sure busted some stuff up, tumbling down and through there. But yeah, the arrow was true, caught both lungs, and yeah, that was my deer hunt. Like, meant so much to me. Like, man, when you just put everything into a hunt that comes together, I think, gosh, I can't even remember now, but I think I was 11 days from doorstep to doorstep with all my scouting and hunting by the time I ended up. But it took everything I had to kill that buck. And then we had a big double-digit mile pull out of there with the buck. But I had a cameraman, so we were able to split the weight. And a cameraman also is like a shorthand for packer as well. So
especially on those hunts.
Yeah, so man, it was awesome. Learned a lot about myself, a lot about hunting mule deer. It gave me the challenge I was looking for. It's so difficult to arrow a big mature buck, and then to kill that thing up in the high country like that, just the way I like it, and come out on top in the end, just meant like the world to me. So that was pretty fun stuff, man. I was looking forward to that hunt all year, and it did not disappoint.
Well, that's what it's all about, and just a testament to how bow hunting the high country goes. I mean, you have a great plan on that day one, and you're like, okay, I got this buck here, and I'm going to pass on this buck because and then none of that turned out. None of that. I mean, and that's just how it goes. And you could have easily just gone home after that instead of relocating and be like, I had a good hunt. But like you're saying, you spend every last hour, every last day that you have available to, let's go relocate. Let's go find another one. And you can punch your tag just as easy as go home empty. I mean, it can happen that quick. And that's the beauty of it, right? I mean, something's bedded in just the right spot, and you go up there and kill it, pack up and go home. It's just like that. That's the beauty of bow hunting.
It is. It can come together so quick, can it?
It can.
Yeah.
It can. And that's why you never give up. You never want to sell that hunt short and I got a couple days I could hunt, but I've had enough. I'm going to go home. And maybe it's just how we're wired too. I mean, I'm going to stay and hunt. If I have the days, I'm going to stay and hunt and give it all that I have. And if then I go home empty, I'll feel good about it at least. That I didn't leave anything on the table. I'm looking forward to getting that one produced, and that'll be probably one of the first ones that we release in 2025. Mule deer hunting, probably a July release. It's one of those hunts that comes first in the season. Usually, August. What are your favorite dates? You like August for mule deer? I know some states, like Wyoming, September 1st is the opener, unfortunately. I like those August dates. But what are some of your favorite dates for hunting mule deer early?
I definitely like those August dates. Yeah, it's the September dates aren't bad either. You're just you're right on the edge of them going to secondary living and using more cover. I've also found that hunting pressure will send them into secondary living even in August in high pressure units. But yeah, I do like those August dates. Like if I had the perfect set of dates for me is like the August 15th to September 1st. I love those dates for sure. But yeah, a lot of these states are opening September 1st, and so you gotta strike early on these hunts, like in Wyoming or some of these. Colorado has a September 1st opener. So yeah, you got to strike while the iron's hot, or strike while they're in that alpine environment up and through there. And so you really want to get it done earlier on limited time for those bucks. But yeah, it's pretty fun stuff. I think it'll make an awesome video. Just the country is so extreme and gnarly, and then chasing great bucks and close encounters and good footage. So yeah, it should make for an awesome film. I'm really excited to see it take shape and take light and kind of relive the adventure through watching it. So yeah, that was my big one for the year. But you
killed a big bull though too.
Yeah.
So tell me about that a little bit. And this is going to be another episode. So we have 5 elk hunts in 2025. I did 2, you did 2, and Jordan Brashears did 1.
You killed a great bull in Wyoming.
You killed a 350-plus bull in Wyoming.
Wow.
And you killed that mule deer, and that's just kind of the start. And we still have, black bears and New Zealand coming up.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, we have a lot of exciting stuff. But I want to – so is this your best bull to date that you killed?
Yeah, it was my best bull to date.
And it looked like a big 7x7.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was a true 7-7, which is pretty wild. I'd love to tell you that I was targeting this bull and knew he was there. He's a mistaken identity. I showed up to my spot, and this was an area that I've hunted multiple times. I know the area really well, and I had e-scouted some different places that I wanted to get in this unit. And so this was one of these new places. Took a bunch of effort to get in there, a bunch of miles to be able to, and kind of like a challenging access to access this piece of public in and through here. So I accessed in there, and I was just trying it out for the evening. And then I was going to get, I have spots that I know in there and other locations I wanted to get to. So I was just trying out this new spot that I'd e-scouted, pretty much drove and went right to that spot. But at this time, it's pretty peak rut, and get down there and sit in there for an evening, and it's real quiet. I just don't hear anything, and it may be a bust for tonight. I'm starting to almost think in my mind where I'm going to be in the morning or the other spots I got to check. And then pretty soon a bugle rings out, and it was a hot day, and so fairly late when a bugle rings out. And it was a great big 6-point. He came out chasing his cows. He was in the perfect spot with the wind, but I just drug my feet just a little bit, just like it's the first night watching him. Definitely a bull I want to kill, but I know those winds are going to switch around as it's getting pretty late. So the winds are right now, right where he comes out with his cows. It's like, let's just wait and see what happens here. And it wasn't 10 minutes or 5 minutes went by, and the wind started to switch and come down. So it wouldn't have been right for that spot. So I ended up having to make a big circle around him. And it's evening, and I get to the vantage point, relocate him again, and we just don't have much light. And I looked at my cameraman. I'm like, you think we have enough light? He goes, no, I don't think so. And I'm like, we're going anyways. I'm going to go see if I can kill this bull tonight. If he's right there in the right spot when I pop up, we could kill him at last light. And I've got a great wind now in my face. We've circled around. It's a big shooter bull. He's only got 6-8 cows. We're going to give it our all here. And so we gave it our all. It got up there, and it got dark on us, just like you thought it would. But I was able to back out, left him bugling, had a perfect win. I left him at 150, 200 yards that night is how close I got at last light. And he just didn't work out. He kind of worked up higher in the trees, so he didn't work by us. And so in the morning, it's like, well, I know where I'm going to go for this bull. I'm going to go relocate him again. He's not spooked. And I show up to where he is supposed to be, and he's nowhere to be found. No bugles, didn't hear him. And so keep working down that ridge, and it's a little bit later, but I finally heard a bugle down below, and I'm like, that's got to be him. I found him, and there's another bull bugling, another one. It's like, there's a couple in there, and there was a satellite bull around him the night before. And so anyways, I catch the elk on the far side, and I can hear the big bull bugling. We get into a satellite. We actually get into a satellite 7-point and another 5x6 or something that we pass that were satellite bulls. And then there's another big 6-point there on the hill. And geez, it's a 330, 340 bull, and he's all by himself up there, and he's working across. And so I just go put myself in the mix, and I kind of get in behind the herd bull that's bugling, which I think is this great big 6-point, big 350 plus 6-point. And get in behind him and kind of trail him all morning, but never get eyes on him. And they disappear into this patch of trees. And, just kind of play it patiently with the wind right. And I set up on a vantage point where I can see that group of trees. And, the bull is just losing his mind. He gets in there, he quiets up, and then he starts bugling again at 12, 1 o'clock, bugling his head off. I was like, oh man, should I get in there after him? I'm like, and I just know how that thick cover is, and going in after him middle of the day, I'm like, I am in the perfect position. He's going to come out this evening, and I'm going to kill him. He's going to come out and feed with his cows, and I'll make a move on him, and I'm going to kill him. So I'm just not going to go in. And then he keeps bugling, and he keeps bugling. It's 20 times, 25 times he's bugling in the middle of the day, and it's just driving me nuts. And then pretty soon I catch him. I see him on the edge of the timber, and he looks like he's by himself. And I see him, And I'm like, that's not that 6 point. I'm like, oh, that's a 7. That's a different bull. That's not even the big one I was chasing last night. He's a 7-7. Just a beautiful top end on him, like great big frame on him. I'm like, well, I don't need to look for the 6 point. If that thing's a shooter, that's like my dream bull. To kill one with extra points and a 7-7 is like pretty special. So I see him on the edge of the timber. I'm like, well, if I can see him, I can kill him. I'll make a play now, it's middle of the day. I make a play over. He kind of disappears in some trees. I just get to where he was, and I catch him bedded, and I can see his rack right there bedded, and he's bedded at 35 yards from me. And I have my cameraman with me. We snuck in there, and so now I'm sitting 35 yards from him. And this day I had a great wind. It was like a 15-mile-an-hour wind from the bull to me. It's just right in my face. And then I can see another cow there bedded. So he's bedded with a cow. And I've got some windows through there, but it's really tight. And we sit there for like an hour. And finally the cow gets up, and she feeds out broadside at 30 yards wide open. And it's just like, this is the only cow I can see, and I can see him. And then he stands up, and I'm like, oh, here we go. Like, this is going to happen right in front of our faces. And then that cow just does about face and then turns and walks back into the thick stuff. So he, like, never pops out where that cow is. He just takes chase after her, and the cow kind of works off, and then he's just kind of sitting there feeding, and he's got his harem, I think is down below him or whatever, and that one cow walks off. And I just couldn't get a shot through that thick stuff. I'm trying to find a window. I just can't find. It's only 30, 35 yards away. And there's one window that he's going to walk through. And if I would have drawn back, and if I would have cow called at the right point, there was a window to shoot him right there. But I didn't know if he was going to be high enough in the window to get a good shot. And then, once I'm drawing back, I'm making a bunch of movement at 30 yards as well. So I can't really tell where his head's facing. And so he walks through that window. He never stops. I never stop him. I'm not at full draw. Walks through that window and walks over the top. So 35 yards broadside, still doesn't know I'm there. Okay, so I kind of take chase over the hill, and I get over the cedars, and I can catch like elk down below me. But I'm in the thick stuff with him, where it's just like, it's just not going to come together, and I'm going to end up blowing this whole situation up. And I actually sneak out of there. Now at this point, he's 40 yards down below me in the thicks. And I just tell my camera, I'm like, we got to get out of here. Like, we pretty much ran from a giant bull that I'm in bow range, but I just don't see it coming together. It's going to blow up in there. And so I backed out, back to the vantage point, and just said, we'll kill this bull tonight when he comes out into the open, when I keep track of him and see him. And so left him unspooked, and sure enough, in the evening he came out, spotted him from the vantage point, made one play down and around, and I couldn't turn him up again, and then heard him bugle, so he had gone like kind of up and over the top. So back to the vantage point, catch eyes on the cows again. Okay, I know where they are at. Made a different approach around, and just approached around, and it was like perfect. The cows were up above and on the knob, and the bull was kind of tailing him, but he was like 50 yards behind him. So the cows are all out of sight, and now I just got this bull just feeding there. And I poked around the corner, and he's like 60 yards. And he's just feeding, no idea I was there. And I kind of got to like back up a little bit to kind of get the angle to send an arrow through him. I could have gone forward, but then I would have had to pop out at about 35 yards in a bunch of like tight brush. So I chose to like back kind of up the hillside where I could get an angle on his body. And then, able to put a really good arrow in him. The shot felt absolutely money. And then my cameraman goes, I think you missed low. I'm like, there's no way. My pin was on that thing. Like, I had a good range, pin was on him, shot him, and he bolted off and like crashed in through some brush and then crashed over the top. And I'm like, there's no way. I'm like, my pin was settled. Like, I hit that bull. He's like, I think the arrow went low. I'm like, low, God. So give him some time, and then go up and go look for that arrow, find the arrow, and it's caked in blood, and the blood trail's just huge, both sides. And, it's like nailed him, But I like start tracking him, and it looks like his couple spots where he stopped, it looked like he dropped half his lung right there. It's just all that, the pieces of his lung and bubbles, and just a pile of lung blood there, and couple different spots. Start trailing him, and Yeah, like we gave him, I don't know, half an hour, 40 minutes or whatever, and start on the trail. And I'm just sure I've drilled him by the blood and by the sign. We don't go too far, and I jump that bull out of his bed.
Really?
Yep. Jump him out of his bed. And I mean, there is blood everywhere. Both sides. Looks like half his lung is in his bed. Like he's just like, he's hurting, but I jumped him. And I was like, oh man, jumped him. Like, what in the heck?
How much time did you give him?
I'd say 40 minutes.
So it's not like he charged right after him.
Nope.
Wow.
Nope. 40 minutes. Should have been dead. So get up there, jump him. Like, well, got to give him some more time. But I also want to trail him with the lights on in case I got to get another arrow in him. It's also really warm that evening. So I don't feel good about leaving him overnight. I feel like the meat's going to spoil if I leave him overnight. I know I have a good arrow in him. There's blood everywhere, both sides. I mean, it's just like a walk behind blood trail. But yeah, I had to trail that bull up. Easy blood trail to follow. So I give him another 20, 30 minutes. 30 minutes, I'd say. And I start trailing him again, following the blood trail. And I actually run into a couple more bulls in there. I think it's him and it's not him. And then they keep moving off. And I follow him probably 300 yards, like 250, 300 yards, and he's just spilling blood. It's just like, man, he cannot still be alive. And walk up and into these trees in there, into those branches, and catch him in there. He's bedded with his head up. Had to put another arrow in him. Yep, shot him at 20 yards, 15 yards. I don't think he could have got out of that bed. So, yeah, we find where the arrow went. It's it kind of hit him like low and back, and I think got that liver and then got the offside lung. That's where I saw it. So he was definitely hurt and going to die, but yeah, it didn't.
Just low.
Yeah, that kind of low and back in that one spot that takes him forever to die. That liver shot sometimes takes him a while to die. But yeah, I mean, of course, everything's going through your head trailing that thing up. You just want to make the right moves to end with the bull that you stuck an arrow in. I knew the shot was true and the blood was really good, but yeah, I actually got the liver and then got that offside lung, I think is what I got.
Yeah, when it's low and a little bit back like that, like that's kind of a deceiving spot. And, I don't think it's a dead zone, but you're just not cutting a lot.
Mm-mm.
And it does take longer. And so it was quartering away pretty good.
Yep.
You're shooting the hides. You have nice, good gashing. So, I mean, usually, that's the good thing about a low hit is usually puts a lot of blood on the ground, or at least what blood is available is going to be on the ground and easy for you to follow. So you have that going for you. But you probably had a pretty good gashing wound, too.
Yeah.
Quartering.
Yeah, a big gashing wound. Like, he bled probably better than any bull I've ever seen. Recovery, the blood trail was tremendous out both sides. It wasn't spraying like a lung hit. It was more like dripping out both sides, but he was just piling out of them. And the arrow actually came out in a good spot right behind the front shoulder. Maybe a hair low, but I think you're just behind the heart and you're low in the lungs, or caught that one offside lung, didn't get the first lung, so it's like a single lung hit. But the blood trail, like not only was it bleeding out both sides like crazy, but he just couldn't walk far, and then he'd stand there and then he'd bleed a bunch, and it was just piles on the ground. I mean, he wasn't going to make it far, but sometimes it just surprises me how tough these animals are. So good lethal shot on him, just a little bit back and low, and it did the job. I mean, definitely going to recover that bull, but I had to put another one in him at 15, 20 yards there.
And I think this is a good example of a situation on why I shoot an evolution hide with that big cut diameter. And I truly believe like a hit like that with a small fixed head, you wouldn't find it.
I think you're right.
And if you did find it, he would have gone way farther, a lot of miles when you have like a marginal hit. But that's why you shoot an evolution hide, is because they pick up when you make those marginal hits. They make it more of a lethal hit than it would be with any other smaller fixed head. And I'm a fixed blade guy. But I think those hits, those liver hits, those one lung hits with a fixed head, I've seen it with Eastman's Bowhunting Journal. Guys submitting stories, the rodeos, the chases with these small fixed heads, or they don't find them. But with a hide, with a big cut like that, a 2-inch expandable cut, that takes a marginal hit and makes it a lethal hit, and you recovered that bull.
Yep.
I think that's so important. That's a great example too of why I shoot the hide. But and I've seen it back in the day too. Back and low with a fixed head, you don't find that bull. And so I'm that's a testament to it right there. I'm convinced, but that's why I shoot the evolution hide.
100%, man.
Yeah.
It's the reason why I killed that bull, why I recovered that bull. Maybe I would have got him with another head. Maybe it would have happened, but I do know with the hide it caused tremendous damage. Yeah. He bled out to where he lost his energy. He couldn't go any further. Of course, it's survival for these bulls. They want to do everything in their power to put distance in between you and them. They're so tough. Oh, they're so tough.
Yeah.
They're so I couldn't believe this bull was still alive.
Wow.
But it comes down to the decisions you make, too, recovering those things. And, gave him 40 minutes, thought it was a true hit. On a liver hit like that, should probably give him a couple hours, I didn't know that's where the hit was. The blood told me that it was a good hit. Yeah. I felt good about the shot. And also, I did not feel good about leaving that bull overnight. I would have lost that meat. And so, I gave him time, went to recover. I jumped him up. I gave him more time, but then I didn't want to give him 2 hours and try to track with a headlamp in case I got to put another arrow in him. I want it to be daylight. So it's almost like I know this bull's hurt bad. I can see the blood trail. I see half his lung in his bed right there. That bull is bleeding like crazy. I'm going to keep on this bull. If I've got to put another arrow in him, I'll put another arrow. And that's what ended up happening, and shot him, right at dark right there with the second arrow, or right before dark, 15 minutes left of light. But yeah, my biggest bull to date, it is all credit to that hide and the damage it did to him. And, but yeah, my best bull, like, just an incredible experience. It came together pretty quick, able to capitalize on that opportunity and find that mystery 7-point that I never knew existed, that I thought was the big 6. And it's just a tremendous bull, man. I couldn't be happier.
And I wanted to go back a little bit too. I want to hear what that thing scored and some of his dimensions too. Mm-hmm. But I think that's a testament on experience and playing on that. And you knew how hard to push, but you knew what you were up against as well with meat spoilage, and you probably couldn't let him set overnight with what you were seeing, with what was on the ground for blood, and how you jumped him. How far did he go from the shot to where you jumped him?
Within 100 yards.
So that means this bull's hit hard.
Yep.
This bull's hit hard, and so that's the right decision. You do not, like a lot of guys would just back out and be like, nope, I'm coming back tomorrow. But that's the right choice. If they bed within 100 yards, they're hit hard.
They're hurt.
They're really hurt. And so if you stay on them and you be smart, you're not just blundering through chasing them after you've jumped them once, but you're being methodical about it, right? You're pressing, but you're still hunting. Mm-hmm. You're not just following blood. You're hunting. You got your arrow nocked. You're ready to kill.
That's right.
And so that's very important. And that's kind of a downside of bow hunting and shooting something in the evening, because that can happen. You can run out of light and you're screwed, as far as to put down a bull, in the daylight and do it legally, or even find them. You can't do it in the dark in a lot of situations and lose the meat. I mean, that's one of the risks, right? And so I would have done the same thing of pressing. That bull's hit hard. He went 100 yards and laid down. This happened to me once before too, and it was with the hide, and it was low and back, and it was perfectly broadside, and I did not get a pass through. I gave him 40 minutes, just like exactly what you did. This bull went 50 yards and laid down, and I snuck down to where I shot him, and I jumped him after 45 minutes. And, we replayed the video. Did you replay the video? And you see impact and stuff. And you're like, man, it looks good. I mean, it's a little low, bottom of lungs. And that is probably the greatest benefit of filming our hunts, is that instant replay. That's huge when it comes down to making a very sound decision on whether you go to push something or you just back out and let him be, right? And so having that to your advantage is huge. And same thing, I went down, I jumped this bull that I hit 45 minutes prior, double lung, did not pass through. I smoked 2 ribs on the exit with those expandable wings. It was the Gravedigger at the time, so Dale Perry's design, it's the same design as the Evolution hide. But that bull jumped up and took off on a dead run down the mountain. And I looked at my camera, I was like, what the heck? But I knew this bull went 50 yards and laid down. He's hit hard. And so we immediately pressed. It was in the evening. And we pressed all the way down there, and he went about 200 yards down the mountain and died. Like it was like a death run, right? Like his last effort. But that's how you know when they bed down within 100 yards or even 50 yards, it's over and you need to stay on them. And you either need to get another arrow into them or at least get on them and watch them expire so you can kind of babysit them. And if they do get up or if they do allow you to make another play, shoot them again. But if you're stuck or whatever, I might let them bleed out. But very important. Like, so you played it right.
Yep, on that one I did. It just like experience like these critters that we've shot with bows before is when to take up trail and when not to. So to elaborate on that a bit, like I think too, a lot of these shots that are made on critters, if it isn't a lethal shot, it is press and try to get another arrow in. This is your chance. If you have a leg hit, you hit them back, you hit them something like that. A lot of times I'm going to press and try to get another arrow in them. Where I think you leave them, and a lot of times you can leave elk overnight. If it's getting down to freezing 30 degrees out, you shoot them in the evening, you leave them overnight, you show up in the morning, and everything's perfectly fine. On these warmer nights like what I had, it was only going to get down into the 50s, maybe the 60s at night, and so it was way too warm to leave an elk overnight. But I think those shots that you want to leave them and give them time would be like a gut shot. The gut shot, you're not going to get much blood. The bull is going to die. And I've seen it work both ways. I think elk are so dang tough that a shot through the guts, he's going to be sick, and maybe you got a good chance to catch up to him. You don't want to jump that bull while he's still fresh because he can go miles and you won't have the blood to trail him down. So that would be a good instance to like, okay, I'm going to leave him. He probably isn't going to die for a few hours. And I've also seen it where people leave him and they go for miles with a gut shot and die where people can't find him either. Guts is not a good shot, but that would be an instant where I'd like, if I saw that bull bed, I'd probably want to leave him and let him die right there. I don't want to jump him up. I think, anything that isn't a lethal shot, if you jumps the string or you get like a leg or a hind quarter or something like that, I think in those instances, you want to try to get another arrow in that animal. You want to try to make another stalk or keep your eyes on them or make another play. Lungs or heart, doesn't take long for those bulls to die. We say give them 40 minutes. It's usually done within a minute.
Usually you watch them die.
Yeah. What would be like an instance where you'd leave a bull, maybe if you're unsure of the hit, and you don't know where you got them at. You just know you got them in the body somewhere. You're not sure if your guts, liver, lungs, like that would be an instant to like give them more time. Like give them a couple hours before you trail them up, even 3-4 hours.
I'm glad you brought this up because this is what happened on my hunt too. I shot this bull at 60 and he was just crested over sagebrush and it was wide open and I couldn't see the impact. I didn't see the impact. So that right there, do you have a clear view of the impact, and did you watch that animal die? And the answer is yes or no. And if it's no, you better get on that animal immediately. And in the situation where it was the wide open and it was a rolling hill and I shot him quartering away and he down over the roll, I ran forward as fast as I could because I want to run up there and see what this bull is doing because I was unsure of my shot and I have all this open country that it's going to take him a while to get away from me, so I can keep my eyes on him. So I'm not just going to sit down and be like, okay, I don't know. I took off running. And so I always do that as long as I can see what I'm doing. It's not too thick and I'm unsure of my shot. And so what happened was he did roll down off the top with his cows and his cows are kind of scattering and they were a little bit confused. And the cows crossed the creek and went up the other side, and he did the same thing and kind of disappeared. And so that was about 400 yards from where I shot him from. So that's a huge advantage. I know where he crossed the creek, so that saves me a ton of blood trailing and a ton of time by just running over to the edge and following him to see where he went.
I love that move.
Yes.
Yeah. You don't want to give yourself away or spook that animal. I did the same thing on my bull. I ran over the top of the ledge where he had disappeared, and he cut into the timber, so I wasn't able to see him. So I didn't continue chasing or pushing him.
Yep.
Then I back out. But I love that, Dan. It's like trying to keep your eyes on him and trying to see where you hit that dang thing.
Yes.
Trying to see an entrance or an exit. So that'll just tell you like where you hit it in your trail time. Go ahead.
Yeah. So as he crossed the creek, I saw on his offside, I did not see blood. And so that tells me it did not pass through. I know what type of shot it was. It was a quartering away shot, a perfect quartering away shot, and I held on his last rib, and it did not pass through. So that confirmed that. And then on the far side, as he crossed the creek, I could see my fletching. And so that also confirmed that the arrow was still in him, but it was quartering forward away, and it looked good. And so as he disappeared into the thick stuff, then, I just held up, and we replayed the footage, and he jumped the string a little bit. He just ducked a little bit, but I still hit him mid-body, but it was just back. So I told my camera guy, Tim, we're going to give him 3 hours. And just to be safe, this is a big bull. These are
Smart.
big animals.
Yeah.
I saw where he passed. He already went 400 yards, so odds of him going much further and getting away from me are pretty slim with that hit. I got the evolution hide on the end of my arrow. I know it's game over. And that's confirmed off of looking at the footage and seeing that I got that mid-body hit, quartering away. It's over. It's just a matter of finding him.
Well, and you know where he's at, and you can see his exits out of there too. So
Yes.
you know right where he's at. It's like, I don't need to go rush down in there and blow him up
Nope.
or give him another
Nope.
second wind, or maybe where I can't trail him. I know where he's at, know where the hit is. What a smart move.
Yes, and I'm factoring stomach, liver, diaphragm, one lung. I mean, anatomically, that's probably what happened on a quartering away shot on your last rib, maybe the front of the stomach. But I know that's a killing shot with a 2-inch cut and buried into the offside, right? With that fletch sticking out. It hit rib on the near side is what ended up happening, but it stopped on the far rib on the far side.
The far rib or the far shoulder?
The far rib.
Okay.
Yes, it didn't make it up to the shoulder.
Gotcha.
And so I gave that bull 3 hours, and I told my camera guys, you know what, Tim, we're going to give him 4 hours, because ultimately it's not going to change anything.
So smart.
It's not going to change anything. He's going to be dead, and he's not going to spoil from 3 to 4 hours.
Mm-mm.
And it was a warmer day, but there's no downside, right?
No downside.
There's no downside.
No.
And so after 4 hours, I went down and crossed the creek where and once again, video replay. Tim videoed him crossing the creek. I know exactly where he crossed. That saves so much time. And so across the creek, you have this jackpot of regen, and you have this giant bull, and his cows slid up in through the regen. And I followed up the trail where they went, and I didn't see any blood. And that's a hurdle of a non-pass-through back shot, is you're not going to put a lot of blood on the ground. I don't care what broadhead it is. Mm-hmm. You're going to get internal bleeding. That's what you're going to get. And so I followed up the trail where the cows went, because we verified that by watching them, and he never went up with the cows. And so it's very tight brush, but I throw up the binos immediately as I saw him cross the creek, and I'm watching, and they get across the creek, and then the cows take a left and they go up the ridge, and I'm watching, and I see no antlers, I see no bull. Once again, this is another huge advantage, because now that confirmed by me going and checking, he didn't go up with the cows. He didn't go up the hill. And so you looking at the terrain, and I'm looking at this drainage. Okay, he followed this tree line up, and he's going up. He's got a thick tree line. And these big bulls, when they get that big and that much antler, they don't like to bust through all this tight jackpot cover. Maybe they even can't do it. They will blast through it if they can. But when you have a very hurt bull, he's going to go more of the path of least resistance, but still feel secure. Mm-hmm. They want that feeling of security. So I'm looking at my Onyx, and I can see all this regen patch, and I can see this thick timbered edge. And I knew there was a tank up there. So the first thing I went up about 100 yards, and I checked this water tank, and to see if he expired up by the water tank, which was about 75 yards out in the open with some willows around it and stuff. But so I scoured that, and I'm like, he's not in here. He went a little bit farther. So I look on the map, and I said, you know what I'm going to do? It's afternoon now, and the wind's coming up the mountain, and so the wind's at my back if I were to go up this timbered edge. So I got on this old 2-track, and I climbed all the way up the basin, and I got to the top of the basin to where I felt the last good cover was. And I was like, I'm going to get to that point. I'm going to work my way back down, because at this point I had abandoned the idea of following a blood trail, because he just wasn't putting blood on the ground. But with that wind in my face, a rutted up, smelly bull, that's going to be an advantage to me to say he's still alive. I'm going to smell him before I'm going to see him probably. So that's just another advantage that I knew. And I used that topography to understand what this bull was going to do. And so I'm not kidding you. I made like a 500-yard loop. I got to the top of the basin. I look at OnX, and I'm like, this is about the last of the cover. He's got to be right here. And I step out of the thick timber, and I look down the edge of the timber, and he's laying there dead. He was just right there. And something led me to just understanding the cover and the terrain and what an injured bull would do led me to that bull without an effort. And was it lucky? Yes. But there's also that understanding of how a bull works and those tidbits that I gathered by watching him leave and watching him that he left his cows. He abandoned the cows, and the cows went this way. This is the only other way that an injured bull would go, is staying tight to this cover, and he worked up as far as he could, made it a few hundred more yards. So we're talking about like 600-700 yards from impact to death.
On a great shot.
On a great shot. A little bit back, but no blood on the ground.
Good shot anyway.
And it's a good shot. It's a good shot. And I don't know what it is, the lore up there of these massive bodied elk that are just tough to kill. And I believe it. I believe it for whatever reason. They're huge bodies, and they can just withstand, if you don't hit them perfectly and they don't die within eyesight, they just go. They just have this incredible ability to live. And the bigger the body that they have, they're just a tough animal.
I love hearing that, Dan. So many times we just, we see this giant bull that Dan's killed, and you always make good shots on film. But I think the recovery is an art in itself as well.
Oh, yes.
And the more experience you get with a bow, you just like these little moves that you made along the way, like your eyes on the animal, and then the clues that led you to him. You saw the cows escape with no bull. Like all these things are just clues, but recovering your animal after the shot is an art. And sure, a lot of times it is a perfect shot. They fall in sight and you're a hero. You don't got to do any blood trail. There's blood everywhere. He's dead. No, those are best case scenarios, but you bow hunt long enough. And you don't even have to bow hunt that long. But if you bow hunt, you are going to run into situations that are less than ideal, where there's still good shots. But the recovery is tough for an elk to go 600-700 yards through the open, to not have a blood trail, to not, like, your mind starts to wander. But you keep on the cause. You are going to recover this animal. You know what a good shot is. But it's an art. And I'd say, like, a lot of the things you did were right. I'd say, try to like really take mental pictures of everything that's going down when you shoot. Of course you want to execute a good shot. Remember exactly where you're standing, or leave an arrow there. So you can walk back to that spot and look at the angle you were shooting at the animal. Remember exactly where that elk was. Like, mark that spot in your mind. Mark the spot where you were in your mind, because you may have to go back to that spot you shot from and then go, oh no, he was by that tree to the left. That's where I need to look for blood. Or, oh, he was a little bit further. So make sure you're taking these mental images, and then it's going to happen in tenths of a second. It's going to happen so quick, but paying attention to where that bull ran, where you heard noises from, where you, like, all these things are clues. And if you don't pay attention to these details, all of a sudden you get up there and you're lost. You can't find blood, because a lot of times they got to fill their cavity before they start bleeding, so you don't have a lot of blood in the first 50 yards. So try to figure out where that bull went. I'm like you, where I want to keep my eyes on him, where I will rush up to the hillside. I'll rush over the top, and I don't want to spook him or blow him up, but I want to get over there where I can get eyes to see if he crosses the next valley, to see where he's at the bottom, to see where he beds down at. This is going to give me a whole lot of other clues, and also like trying to get your binos up and see where your hit or where your exit is. Like, that's going to be another clue that's going to lead you to him. And then, giving him time to die, like we do, 40 minutes even on a good shot, or like you gave this bull 3 or 4 hours because you were unsure. So smart.
Yep.
And then when you start trailing, like be calculated in how you're trailing. Like a lot of times, it isn't just a blood trail we're following, it's also the tracks. So, fresh tracks that are going downhill as he's moving downhill, and you're seeing the imprints into the ground. So, make sure you're not tracking up everything where you're destroying these prints, because you have to CSI this crime scene. You have to find blood, find your arrow, and then find tracks. And sometimes you lose the blood and you're just following tracks for a little bit, and then you pick up the blood again. And blood trails are strange, man. It's like they'll bleed really good, and then it'll kind of dry up and you won't find much blood, and then they'll open up again. It's how quick they're moving through country. I don't know how that blood rate works, but blood trails are not always consistent from start to end. And so paying attention to the tracks, and then also I like to, if the blood trail's good, you can walk right behind it. But what I like to do is I like to mark last blood. So I don't like picking up flagging tape. I'm sure that works or whatever. But I just basically take a stick and I stick it straight up where I found the blood. And then I go look for the next spot. And then I can kind of look back and I can look at my row of sticks down that blood. And that'll also give me an angle where that bull's walking. And you're going to come to spots that you can't figure out. Like, where'd he go from here? Did he go under this tree branch, or did he go to the right? And then you like mark that last blood, and then you start searching to the right. Got nothing there. And then maybe there's some white rocks, or maybe there's a log where he drip of blood. You're like, no, there's nothing crossing there. I don't think you went this way. And then you come back to last blood, and then you go down the trail to the left, and you look for blood. You look for a fallen log. You look on leaves. Try to pick up that next blood. And whenever I can, I try to stay on the blood trail. Like in your situation, you thought where that bull would go. You didn't have much blood. You had to resort to other techniques. But I just like the moment you lead, like the blood trail will lead to that elk. So if you can keep on that blood trail, it's just like really work that blood trail. At least that's, what I like to do is just work that blood trail. And sometimes I'll wander out and look for the animal or something. But for the most part, I keep on the blood and I keep trying to make sense of it, because that blood trail will lead to that animal. And I'm not sure how far he went or where he went. But yeah, getting a direction too. And then, on your onyxes, start marking your tracks, and you can see where you've walked in those directions of those blood. Man, things can happen. That bull can double back on you. That bull can go uphill where you don't think. And a lot of times when guys are losing animals, they just didn't look in the right spot. That bull's dead, not far from there, but he peeled a right, or he went over the top. So just keep trying to dial in that blood trail and further that blood trail. That will lead to the animal. What do you have to add to it?
No, that's very important. And it's very rare, like rare situations where I'm going to abandon a blood trail. If I have blood, I'm not going to abandon it. But after he crossed the creek, and that's another clue that I didn't get, because when he crossed the creek, I was looking at his offside, and so the entrance side where the arrow was, I could not see that side, so I didn't know how much blood he is losing. So I didn't have that clue.
Yeah.
And so I spent an hour down in there in the creek trying to
looking for
sorting out the blood.
Yeah. Okay.
And then I was like, okay, because you're 100% right. You're not going to abandon a blood trail. But looking for an hour, like hands and knees, up the trail and in the creek, I was not finding blood. I found his track, so I'd go for a while, lose his track. It's the hard ground or whatever, and just no blood. And so that's when I got to like, okay, this is ridiculous. I don't have all day. I mean, it's a warm day, and once you get up, I believe about 6 to 8 hours, a bull's going to start spoiling, especially after he's dead, another 6 to 8 hours. And so I don't want to waste any time. I mean, by this time, it's 3 p.m, dark is at 8. And so it's like, I got to get this bull found. Mm-hmm. And so that's where, I abandoned the search for the tracks and the blood based on the conditions, mm-hmm. and used the hunter instinct, looking at the map and like, okay, where would this bull go? And there was one of two places. He either went across the wide open into the next county, basically, but a bull hit this hard. He stayed in the bottom. He stayed in the creek drainage, and I was able to lead up to him.
Yep. And I love the way you played this, too.
Yeah.
Using your instincts and finding that. Like, you had a tough blood trail on your hands. You had a tough tracking job and recovery on this bull. He went a long ways, and you didn't have much blood, and you were able to figure it out from the clues that you gained just by the moves that you made, and able to walk right up on your dead bull, which is the
Yeah.
way it should go. But they aren't always easy, man. Sometimes
No.
you get some tough recoveries like that, and really it's as much of an art as finding and killing that bull as recovering it as well, and you can feel lost inside your head. Just keep to your cause, keep trying to make sense of it. If you've got to go back and find last blood, you find last blood. If you've got to go, search the cover in this draw like you did, like you just keep working at it, and if you made a good shot, you're going to recover that thing usually.
Absolutely. And that's ultimately what I knew is, I made a good shot. He's going to be here close. And you always have in the back of your mind, because you hear stories of guys that, they lose blood and that bull did something goofy at the end and make a hook, a J hook, or they ran up a hill and then they died, or just something that's completely unexpected. And so I think it's so important too, around that last blood or that last sign of like, okay, maybe he made this last move, is to start gridding like in a circle, because they double back a lot. And we see it with the magazines, guys that submit stories that they find the bull 2 days later and it was 50 yards from where they were looking, but it just did something really goofy. And so you never want to underestimate how sly and how tricky a 900-pound animal can be.
100%.
And one last thing to add, what I thought was interesting too, and I've seen this one other time on my moose in British Columbia, but this bull, and you'll see it in the video on this release, but the bull, he laid down from this mortally placed arrow, and he was scratching at it with the back of his beam. There was all this blood on the back of his beam, and I believe he pulled the arrow out, because you could see where he was like reaching back and struggling, like kicking, but he was trying to get at that wound and get at that arrow. And then with his antler, he was rubbing at it, because there's all this smeared blood on the back of his beam. And it's like, why else would there be blood on the back of his beam like that? And the arrow was like kind of mangled, and it's not like he went through a bunch of thick brush and the brush mangled this arrow, but it was like smeared blood all the way to the back, whereas in a normal situation with a far back hit, there wouldn't be blood like up to the fletchings. And he like successfully pulled it out a little bit, so it was just barely hanging on. So very interesting. And my moose in British Columbia did the same thing. I hit him back on that last rib, and he went about 200 yards, and the arrow was laying like in the brush where he had stopped, because there's a bunch of blood on the ground, and then the arrow was laying there. But I'm fully convinced that bull reached around and pulled that arrow out. And I've seen that with, in videos of it, like whitetail hunts of guys doing it. But that's what I'm convinced that this bull did too, is he had this wound and he was trying to like get what was poking him, So I thought that was interesting too.
Yeah, it's super interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, good job on the bull, on your season, on the recovery. I love hearing about that stuff too, because it isn't always fall in sight, even on a good shot. It's amazing how far they can go. They are just the toughest animal on planet Earth. Like, maybe there's a tougher one out there, but man, elk pound for pound, they just have a lot of will to live.
That's so true, and that's what I geek out about the most, are these recoveries, because it's something that you can't replicate one recovery. It's so different. Every recovery is so different. And like you said, yeah, if they die within eyesight, that's something to celebrate. That's why we're celebrating, is a quick kill, dead in 30 yards. That's a celebratory shot, right? That's something to be proud of. And we want to kill these animals as quickly and humanely as possible. Mm-hmm. And we take it very seriously. I mean, if you're a bow hunter, you live and die by that. Mm-hmm. I mean, and so these blood trails and tracking are so important. That's what I love about stories. When I read stories or talking about hunts, is what was the recovery like? Because I feel like you can't ever learn enough. Mm-hmm. There's always something to pick up. There's always something to add to the toolbox for next year, mm-hmm. and how I'm going to treat a given situation. And so I'm still learning. Mm-hmm. You're still learning about it, and that's, I think, ultimately is what is going to make us better hunters from here on out, is that art, mm-hmm. to blood trailing.
Yeah. The decisions you make directly affect whether you're going to recover that animal or not, and it's a gray area. You don't know whether to take chase, to hold back, to give time, and then you might know the right answer, but it's tough to act on the right answer too. You're so eager to go recover that bull or that buck that it's tough to give them 3 hours or 4 hours. You might know that that's the right move, but you might think, well, I'm just going to trail it a little ways, see what the blood looks like, or I'm just going to follow it up to here, and then you bump that bull and you never recover him because he got a bunch of adrenaline and made it too far, and you weren't able to track the blood trail or whatever the case is. So play these situations smart. It's not over when you release the arrow. Pay attention to all the details. Be calculated in the decisions you got to make, and most likely you're gonna walk up on your dead bull just the way it should be. But pay attention to that stuff. It can go wrong in a hurry. So yeah, no, I think that's really important.
Absolutely.
Yep. All right. Thanks, buddy.
Yep.